The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here with Jukka Haho, and today we will talk about some of the new features in Vertex PD rendering. Anytime you can raise your hand during the presentation and ask questions, or you can type the questions in the question pane. Okay. So first we'll take a look at the new features in a PowerPoint show, and then in the end I'll show some of the new features in Vertex PD too. Okay. This is a very basic rendering with the old version of Vertex PD default settings, and this is a much more photorealistic rendering created in the latest version of Vertex PD. Both are rendered with default settings, and it's exactly the same house with the same materials and everything. So once again, here's the difference. Old version and the current version. This rendering style is somewhat slower than what we are used to. It could take in a full HD resolution something like 90 seconds to create an image like this. If you look closely at the shadows, like in here, you can see some noise and some banding in the shadow areas, and we can get rid of those unwanted artifacts by adding the number of samples in shadow creation. So this is settings for a final image that have more samples for shadows, and a rendering like this could take like 10 minutes or 15 minutes to be ready, but it's much better in terms of these details, and especially the shadows. So maybe the #1 new feature in rendering is called image-based lighting. In this series of renderings, you can see how the intensity, the direction, and the quality of light changes when we have different environment images loaded in the model, like this. All these images were created by simply switching between different environment images. It's a very easy way to handle complicated light setups. This is how the environment image looks like and how it works. On the left side, you can see an HDR file format panorama image. Typically it comes with ground and sky in it, and this image is then wrapped around the model like on the right side image, and the image itself contains all the information needed to create highly realistic lighting conditions in your projects. So you don't have to set up any lights in Vertex PD. You only use this global environment image to create the lighting. Also, we can simulate like a photo studio lighting with these same tools. In here, the panorama image is an image of a photo studio with lights, reflectors, backgrounds and everything. And when we apply this image as an environment image for the project, this is the outcome for the rendering. Another new feature is called area light, which helps with indoor renderings especially. This render was created in an old version of Vertex PD. Typically the default settings in Vertex created dark or flat renderings. Area light helps in two different ways. First, you can apply realistic looking direct light with it. Like in here, I have added 3 area lights in the model and the rendering is much better. But there's in the shadows, the image still appears flat, especially the ceiling. So in the next image I have checked the indirect light checkbox on. Now we still have these 3 direct area lights in the model, plus we have some indirect light bouncing between the large surfaces such as the floor and the 4 walls in the model. The light looks much more realistic now and has a nice warm color in it too. So this indirect light is typically used in interior renderings only, where you have these large surfaces that the light can bounce between. Also in Vertex 2040 we have much more advanced shadows than ever before. The shadows now look soft, they are transparent, and they can be rendered directly on a background image, like in this case. Or the shadows can be created on any other background, like the white background in this example. This new feature helps rendering on a photo background, but personally I like to have the shadow catcher feature on with any kind of background. It seems like the model is not floating in space anymore when it has these ground shadows. And this is how you use this shadow catcher. First you have to create a 3D model for ground, and then you apply a certain material, a rendering material for the ground, and then just render. Rendering materials have been added in the library. First of all, the color libraries have been updated, all the paints. Before we only had these diffuse reflectance paints available. Now we have different degrees of glossiness, like the 4 first balls in this example. And also we can create multi-layer paints like car paint with a base layer, then let's say a metallic flake layer and a lacquer layer on top. And now with this kind of parametric materials, adding new color libraries is made very easy for you. Some wood materials for Vertex PD profiles have been added. They are based on much better texture files than before, and you can mix any color with the texture to simulate different paint finishes, like both transparent and opaque paints. But there's one small problem with this color shader. The origin of the section view texture seems to be in the middle of this section surface and not in the bottom left hand corner like in real life. So these wood materials created like this, they didn't come out as good as I thought. I was a little bit disappointed with this shader, but I think we can fix those section view texture files so that we can do better with these materials. There's a number of wood species added in the library that have this section view image as a separate texture file. And here's log material made the same way as the profile materials. Also, we have siding materials, parametric now. You can enter the direction and the dimensions of the boards and mix the boards with, or the textures with any color. So basically you only have one or two or very few different siding materials, and you can create many different colors with the same material. Also, we have added some metal materials in the library, both glossy and diffuse reflecting metals, and also metal finishes like hammered metals or scratched or brushed, almost anything. And then there's parametric tiles for interiors. Dimensions, colors can be entered for the tile material. So here's an overview of the best new features in the latest version of Vertex PD rendering. The main thing, of course, is this image-based lighting that lets you very easily create much better renderings than before without having to set up any lights. And also in interior views you can use these area lights and indirect light and get better results than before. And with light comes shadows. We can create soft transparent shadows in rendering. We have added some new rendering materials, but the rendering material library as a whole has not been reorganized yet. It's in the plans, but it has not been done yet. Also, there's a few new file formats for saving these rendered images. And with these new features, you will be able to create renderings like this very easily, or images like this on a photo background. The user interface for rendering has changed too. Some of the tools have been combined and added in the model tree view, and also here's a new dialog for saving rendered images. There's an all new background image library with high-res background images. There are a few new light types, and then there's these HDR images to be used as a global environment for lighting. Also, any light setup that you create yourself can be saved and used as a studio, and there's a few studios that we provide you that you can load in any project. Some of you have seen one of the fancy new feature of saving a panorama image from Vertex to be viewed on a web browser with the Flash viewer.
It's hard to hear. So
Okay.
I have no any idea what is.
Okay.
So let's check this audio settings.
Okay.
Is it any better now?
Can you hear us? So I'm not going to go through this panorama image creation in detail. Here's a step-by-step how you do it. And Vertex creates this JPEG with 6 different views, and you still need a Flash viewer or something like that to view the actual panorama in a web browser. And the last thing, in Vertex PD 2014, we have a more accurate 3D model of some of the roofs to appear more realistic in renderings. So the actual 3D model has been made more accurate. For example, these roof tiles and machined seamed steel roofs. Okay. So I can show you some of the new features and the user interface in Vertex. With these new rendering tools, it's a very good idea for a preview only to minimize the window or make it smaller, the actual 3D window, so that the rendering runs faster. Like I said, some of the rendering tools have been added in this tree view. So you right-click on the rendering, and in here you have mass editing for rendering materials and editing individual rendering materials. Also in here you can find the functions for lights, loading a studio, saving a studio, setting backgrounds, foregrounds, environments, and things like that. And this save rendered view function takes you to the new image saving dialog. So the first thing when you start rendering with this new version, if you have an old project, you have to load a studio to include these advanced lighting techniques. So for example, in here we could load this default studio, which is much better than what we are used to, but it doesn't take too much time to render. This high-res version is the slowest to render. Okay, now we have this studio loaded, and we can render by hitting Shift B. So this is kind of a preview rendering on screen only. And as you can see, it's a little bit slower than what we are used to in previous versions of Vertex PD. Okay. And now if I wanted to save this image, I would go to View, Save Rendered View. This same dialog opens in a number of places other than this, but you can find it in the View drop-down menu. Okay, so this rendering dialog appears. And the first thing you have to choose is the resolution for this image. There's two ways of defining the resolution. You can either define it relative to the window size, or you can directly enter the pixels in here, or you can pick them from the list. And in here, you typically want to make a standard rendering, but you can also select from the list like a stereo image or panorama image. But the normal rendering is always this standard. And after that, there's this indirect light checkbox that you would keep unchecked unless you are making an interior rendering. It's used only in interior renderings. Then there's this environment lighting that shows the current environment image that is used for this rendering. And also some of the main parameters for this environment light, such as the intensity of the light and this number of samples for shadow creation. And the last thing you would do, you would define a file name for your rendered file, and it's in here. And then just click render, and that would create the high-res image for you. So this is all new. Some of the materials that we have created, they can be found in the material libraries. For example, the wood, they are in wood and natural. In here you have different species of wood for wood profiles. And for walls you have this parametric sidings. And then there's also these paints that have been updated. So now you first pick this glossiness of the paint and only then the actual color of the paint. So I can pick like this glossy paint, and there's a dialog that I can go directly to the color chart and pick the color that I want, or I can use the Windows palette to define the actual color of this glossy paint. So it's a little bit different from the previous version. The background library has been renewed to, let's go to set background. And in here, right in the root of this background directory, you have all the different background types, like the plain white background. Then you also can show this environment image as a background too, if it has large enough resolution. Then there's these graduated backgrounds and image backgrounds. And these image backgrounds, this last one, scaled image background, is the most usable of these. And in the subfolders, there's a little bit more of the same type of backgrounds. Different backgrounds with grass and skies, clouds and studio backgrounds and interior backgrounds. And all these images are in high resolution. Also, if you want to change this environment image, you go to Set Environment and then to this folder with all the options that we have added in here. Actually, there's 2 files per each environment image. There's a preview image that is JPEG or PNG, and then there's this actual environment image that is in HDR file format. So you should use this larger file in every case. Also, like I mentioned, the roof model is for example, this kind of roof can be an accurate model, pretty much like the wall can have an accurate and coarse version. It looks much better in rendered views. So basically, that's all the main features that are new in rendering. Any questions?
Hello.
Hello.
Do you have the thicknesses of the new accurate views for the roofs? Because when I used the tiled roof, only some of the tiles were shown because of the thickness of the layer. Do you have the exact thickness that we should use?
There might be the structures that the tile layer is not enough. So,
Hello? Ja, men tog det helt där. Hello? Har du sett den då när ni snackar? Kommer den här med? Vi snackar av.
They're unmuted. Hello? Can you hear us? Hello? We can't hear you. Hello? Did you guys go home? Can you type a message to us if you can hear us? The audio is rendered useless right now. Our microphone is live. Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like very quiet. What's really going on? Wires. What just happened?
I said here, your LAN connected, but they were kicked out, and they reconnect. They have connection issues. But we don't lose the. Hopefully all the other people. Not vertex.
We can hear you now.
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Hey.
We had some audio, some problems with the. It started to work again. So Pekka, you're welcome.
So you have any questions?
Yeah, hi. After you load an environment, how do you edit the lighting that came with that environment? Can you change the direction of that lighting?
There's really no way of changing the direction, but you can change the intensity. So for each image, the direction of the light is fixed. You either have to rotate the model or then edit the actual image, like make a reflection of the, or rotate the image, or flip it.
How do you rotate the image?
You have to have an image editing software to do that. But Vertex in itself doesn't allow editing this environment image.
So it means that this environment lights works that way.
But you can rotate, if you have sunlight added in the model, you can of course rotate the sunlight.
So would I have to delete the environment and then add sunlight?
You can have both the environment and sunlight at the same time, if you want to.
Huh. Okay.
Because this environment light, mostly it's for like a fill light. It's not necessarily a primary light.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions?
Täälläkin se kuvaa. So here's an environment image. There's clearly one direction where sunlight comes from, but light comes from all the other directions too. So it's kind of an ambient light more than an only sunlight. And this is the whole idea of using these environment light images. It's much more complex than just sun. Light comes from all directions, really. Of course, there's one primary direction where the sun is, but yeah, it's in here. It's in the middle, where there's light colors in this image. So the light comes mostly from here, but it also comes from all the other directions. That's how it works.
Can you put one in to the rendering you have on the screen?
Sorry?
Can you put an environment image into the rendering that you have on the screen? Or does it take a long time?
Yes. So in here. Okay, so I load an environment. Let's say this one, for example, and then just render. And by default, this environment image is not visible, but I can change the background so that it shows this environment image as a background. It's in here. So now when I render, I have it both as a background and as a source for the light. Like this.
Okay, any other questions?
Okay, and when you save a studio, is it also saving the environment?
Yes, it is. It saves all the lights, all the backgrounds, and the environment. So it's an entity of really everything that relates to lighting and backgrounds.
So it means that user can save like different kind of sets for different purposes.
Yeah, and then load them into other projects.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Any other questions?
No more questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Matt.
Hello.
Hello.
How do you add like the building to a white background again with some shadows?
Okay, I would need to have first of all white background. So we have to change the background first.
Set background, okay.
To white background. It's the first one in there, and then I would need to change this surface material to this shadow catcher. And you can find the shadow catcher rendering material. I suppose this is a terrain, so I have to go to edit the properties of this. And instead of this grass, I would pick another material. It's in a misc and this shadow catcher.
Okay.
Okay. Now when you render, it will be rendered with shadows on a white background. There's an error message, but it looks like the material changed. Like this. It's a little slower to render with this shadow catcher, but not very much.
And you remember we changed the quite dark environment light there.
Yeah.
That's why its lights are so.
So you should really make the light more at the intensity of this environment light, or set up other lights than the environment light to make it look lighter. But you can see the shadows.
So you have to have some kind
You have
of
to have a
control
surface.
slab, yeah, and then set the surface material to be a shadow catcher.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And do you have any control over those shadows, or now is it just a light, medium, and best quality?
That was the default quality. So the way to make them look better is to add the number of samples. You can do it in many ways, but it's in here. This number of samples defines the accuracy of these shadows. And by default, the number is 100. So if you make it like 500, it's 5 times slower to render, but the shadows are more soft in that case. There's more samples. So for final images, you should use more than 100 samples.
Yeah. And then for the roof accurate materials, where do you find those?
The wood materials.
The roof.
The
Yeah,
roof materials.
Materials.
Yes.
If you want to make that into a true
It
corrugated tile.
It is there in same place than earlier. There was if you could take the properties of the roof layer, there's this texture file. This is now, instead of the 2D drawing what we have been there earlier, it can be also a 3D model. And we have some example models made in our environment. If you go to the, this is not EU version system, and then here in macros and areas there is some of these, like if you take some of these Y's here. Okay, I had this dialog open, so I need to go once more. So this is now machine shimmed roof. I think there is also tile roof. So we have modeled the part of the roof, and actually the system copies this area, the whole roof area, and eat that volume by this shape. So we need to shape the volume by this tile shape or machine shimmed roof shape.
And for these roofs you can apply any rendering materials. It doesn't have to be like an image of a tile roof anymore, because the shape is in the 3D model. So maybe just like red concrete or something like that would be appropriate for this model.
Okay.
And when we are in this accurate model, we have also some changes in those wall shapes. So it's, there's some panel examples of these. For example, some panel shapes. These are now parametric ones. So this, if there is this kind of usable width parameter introduced in siding library or as a wall layer, it is, you can see it also as a parameter of the one wall layer. So it actually, the parameter name is in the wall library is usable width, and in this drawing it is W. And another parameter what we can use is the thickness, is T, and here it's used as a half of the thickness. And how this is made, so in this origin there's two lines, and they are, as you see, the direction fixed and location is fixed, and all the rest are, so there's two lines, and all the rest lines are actually located based on these two lines here. And when this line is going below the minus negative y coordinate, it eats the shape of the siding or wall surface. So in earlier we had, for each panel width we had to be own this kind of shape file, but now this can be also parametric. Okay, next. Or do you have, Matt, still something to ask?
No, that's okay, thank you.
Ole, it's your turn again.
Yes, hello. It's still the same question. I didn't hear an answer before it disconnected or something. But what is the thickness of the new accurate materials?
Because it depends on which is in brick roof. There's some, and machine steel roof some. So I can check it, but you can also easily check it yourself by adjusting, editing the thickness of the brick layer.
Okay.
I can check it and send it.
Yep.
Anything else?
No, thank you.
Come.
Yes, hi. How complicated is it for the user to create their own high definition or high dynamic image? The complex process. Can they create their own background?
For a background?
Yes, for a background.
It is relatively complicated. You need to have a special kind of a camera. It's a better idea to buy one of those commercial HDR libraries with backgrounds.
Well, I'm thinking in terms of, let's say somebody is designing some buildings that are going onto an existing site, and in the old days, used to be able to take a picture of the site and then use that JPEG file as a background.
Actually, the JPEG file works as an environment image too, and it could be good enough for such a purpose.
But then you don't have the kind of lighting. You don't have the same kind of lighting that the dynamic image has.
Yeah, it's not quite as good, but it still works, and it gives light from the right direction. It can be used.
Yeah, okay. And you said earlier that you can still, after that's rendered, you can still add, or after that JPEG image is brought in, you can still add a sunlight or certain other kinds of lights.
Yes, we can.
Or you still can. Okay.
What lights? Whatever.
Whatever light, so you can make it more complex than just environment light. The whole light is it. Yeah. That's another idea of yeah. the amount of light in these HDR images is based on the lightness of the certain pixel in that image. So like a white pixel, it sends a lot of light, and a black pixel doesn't send light at all. And everything in between is calculated too.
But to make one on your own, you would need a special camera.
Oh yes.
That takes multiple images.
Yes,
multiple.
and makes them a panoramic image.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, I think I can show you an example of these panorama images that we can create from Vertex. I think I have one in here. So basically what Vertex creates is an image that looks like this. And you need also this viewer file, which is in this case it's a Flash file. And you just double click it and it opens up in a web browser. You have to allow blocked content. And there you have it, and you just navigate with your mouse like this. If you have a large enough resolution image, you can also zoom in and out in perspective. So you have a viewpoint, and the camera turns around this viewpoint 360 degrees to all directions.
So we're to create these 6
different views, up, down, and all the directions. And then we just show this stripe of different views as a panoramic image.
And Kari showed using this kind of SWF1, but there is also different kind of softwares
for viewing this, yes. So Flash is not the only option available. Okay, thank you very much for your interest in rendering. We will put all the material in the internet tomorrow. Thank you.